Hey everyone, it's me Max. I'm interrupting your regular broadcast just because I want to give I just want to quickly talk about this episode because it's slightly different than normal. So I just want to give you some preference to that before we kick off with it. So this, as you know, is the first ever episode that's over an hour, or even over 40 minutes. So it's new for me. And I'd be interested to hear what your thoughts are. And then also, during this time, the guest you're about to hear, this is the only time we could get time together to work, so our structure wasn't as structured. But overall, I still think it's a very good episode, and you hear a lot of our opinions on different techniques in level design on multiple games, as well as the industry as a whole. So I'm going to let you go back to your 11th episode, so I hope you enjoy it, and just let us know what you think about it. I'll be interested to see, because it's like I said, it's slightly different than normal. So I hope you enjoy, guys. Take care. Hello my game lovers, and welcome to the Level Design Lobby. Hey guys, and welcome to the 11th episode of the Level Design Lobby, where you're joining me, your host, Max Pears. And today, we are joined by a very special guest who makes me forget my words, the one and only Sebastian. How are you, sir?
I'm not too bad, mate. I'm not too bad. I make you forget your words, right?
Exactly. You had that effect on me. And you're bringing the enthusiasm today as well, I see.
It's the warm and fuzzy feeling inside.
That's how you make me feel. But enough about our emotions together, mate. Do you want to give an introduction to our audience about you and your career, so we're not just a random hobo off the street?
Sure. My name's Seb. I work in the games industry as a level designer. I've been doing that I've been level designing for about 9-10 years, in a professional capacity probably about 6 or 7 years, maybe. But yeah, I've been in the industry about 7-8 years.
Nice, man, nice. So a wealth of knowledge then.
Well, I've fooled everyone so far, so that's good.
That's it, fake it till you make it.
Yeah, right.
So Seb's joining me today because, as in a previous episode where I had Yasin join me and Seb are going to be talking about a few of our favourite techniques in level design, and I want to get his opinions and his views on what makes good level design. And again, for everyone that's listening, a lot of this is down to context, so what we may say here doesn't necessarily apply across the board for everything. Seb, so I'll kick it off first, so you can sit back and enjoy as you listen to it, like our listeners. So the first thing I want to talk about is exploration through level design. Mm-hmm. And one of the main examples I want to talk about for me personally is I've just picked up a Nintendo Switch, and I'm enjoying it. I'm not gonna lie, I'm enjoying it. I'm worried about the longevity of the console, but that's another topic, I think. But I was playing Legend of Zelda: Breath of the Wild, and to me this has to be one of the best games for encouraging exploration. And a lot of that comes down to some of the game design, but the bit I want to talk about is the level design in it, and it's how it uses the geometry. Yep. So a lot of things they do that I think is amazing is they hide a lot of their landmarks. So you might get a small glimpse of a tower or a side of a really interesting landmark, but what that does is it makes the player have to go climb up mountains or move around what's visually blocking the player from seeing the full site. So again, using that to block and tease to gain a better vantage point is how they do it. And I think that's really smart. And then they tie that in with their traversal system of you've now got a mini loop of trying to climb up, say, a mountain and manage your stamina to get there. So there's that challenge as well. I think that's really, some of the best that I've seen, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, just a big disclaimer, I've only played a bit of Breath of the Wild, right? So I've watched videos and that, so from what little I played of it, it was more just kind of messing around and that. But it does share a lot of the same kind of rules as other big open kind of RPGs, should we say? But yeah, I mean, like you say about kind of they hide certain bits, or just give the player like just a little bit of information, and kind of even if the player's maybe distracted with like a main quest or something like that, it's just that nagging feeling of oh that's cool. What is that? I'm going to go off over there and go and check that out. I mean, it's interesting, right? Because you want to do that as a level designer. You want to always draw players' kind of interest towards key things, and then you want to obviously reward them for doing it. But it's how do you do it in a way which doesn't the player doesn't lose focus, right? Because I find a lot of big open worlds like that is if there's too much stuff on, like kind of drawing your attention, like your attention is nowhere. Do you know what I mean? You have to kind of keep it focused almost.
Yeah, man. I'd say when I was working on the Division, that was one of the hardest challenges for us because Zelda has the great like freedom to to shape its terrain. It's not based on any place. Like Hyrule is its own legend, but for Division, when we were working in New York, one of the things with like the weenies and the hero pieces you use is generally they're like so massive that you can see them from anywhere. And I think a lot of open world games like that are based in cities suffer from the same problem as well, not just the Division. Was in New York especially, every building is like 12 to 20 stories minimum. So it's hard sometimes to get that line of sight to it, and when it's that age old adage of like when everything's pretty, nothing is pretty.
Sure, you have to have contrast in there, right?
Exactly, man. So I think like I said, them having the freedom of Hyrule helped to create that. And I'm wondering, like, if you can come to any mind, say if you were building an open world city where it was like a cramped city. Is there any way do you think that you could encourage exploration through level design? Is there anything that comes to mind? I've put you on the spot, Seb, but
I mean, kind of one of the things that I kind of like to do is so it's all about the illusion of choice, right? Is you've got to keep the player focused and give them just enough information that they can make like a conscious choice. Maybe I want to go and do this, I want to go and do that. So I mean, like you can use certain things. So say you're in a city, right, and like a main street leads to another main street, then leads to another main street, but a side street maybe splinters off from that. And then you use like these kind of, you almost have them as like a hierarchical thing of main street, secondary street, then even maybe like into a building which then leads back to a secondary street and then back to the main street, right? So you create this kind of loop around the environment. In regards to drawing the player's attention to certain like POIs or points of interest, I mean, there's a multitude of different ways to do that. I mean, obviously in the Division, it's snowing all the time. So the palette the visual palette is very kind of white and grey because obviously the buildings. So I think one of the really cool things that you guys did, and that was like you had like scaffolding is really cool way of kind of breaking up the monotonous of like a skyline almost. New York's very kind of almost pillar-esque, right? So
100%, yeah.
So using the kind of the scaffolding elements maybe as not only as a distraction away from like the just the normal kind of way buildings are done, is you can colour that stuff. It's all up to the design level design. All right, well this is going to be big yellow tarpaulin over the side of it, right? So that instantly, that's a colour that's outside of the regular colour palette, draws the player's attention, and then maybe you even kind of lead the player. Maybe like I've gone back to the side street, kind of the main path, secondary path stuff. You lead the player to like the bottom of that, and then it's like, oh, I can actually climb this. So there's the payoff, right? It's like you've shown the player, oh, this is a really cool, interesting thing over here, and then the payoff is, oh, I get to actually explore some more interesting gameplay space.
Yeah, I think that's right. I'm surprised you didn't pick up on the yellow snow that we used as a technique as well. No, we never use yellow snow, people. We did have tarp, blue and yellow tarp was used.
Yeah.
But it's like you're saying, like I think that rolls on to another technique that a lot of level designers use is with colours. It's that visual language, and if you look at Tomb Raider, they often have like white paint or white markings on climbable objects. Uncharted has yellow paint instead. So it's about that visual language that helps indicate to the player that this is a path you can take. This is an object you can interact with, and and I think that's something that if not done right, it can really just bugger you up.
I mean, it's interesting because I always kind of use that as so the Uncharted stuff with like the yellow objects. So like the first opening level of Uncharted 2 is the train carriage that's hanging over the edge. And it's a very linear kind of climbing section, but subconsciously, I mean, even if the player doesn't realize it, they are being taught that everything yellow you can interact and climb on. And I always like to bring it up when people talk about that and kind of give them a bit of level design knowledge.
just dropping bombs at them.
Yeah, just spreading the wealth, right? But it's like you explain to them exactly kind of how that really basic system works, like visual identification, how it works, and people don't realize, and then you just kind of see it click, and they're like, oh, I never noticed that before. And there's like, oh yeah, all the drain pipes that you climb on, they're all yellow, right? So that color identification is a really powerful tool, but it also has to be kind of used in moderation, right? Like if you've got something so important as like a key piece of information that I can climb on this as a yellow, so say like we're using yellow now for that, then you've got to be really careful. You can't use that yellow anywhere else. And it kind of, they get away with it in Uncharted, and I think Tomb Raider to a lesser degree.
I agree on that one with Tomb Raider to a lesser degree, but I just want to touch upon what you said about the train car. Like, I didn't realize, like, when you say it now, it's like, oh shit, like that was a it was a tutorial, and I didn't even realize it. Like, say, you've been subconsciously taught that yellow is your key color, and as you're saying, it's a tough line to do, like being in your face about it and then not doing it. Because I don't know, have you played The Last Guardian?
I've not, no.
So they don't have any visual language on like guiding the player, and I was chatting about it because I liked the fact and praised it for not having any UI like markers in your face, and I loved Ico for doing the same thing as the predecessor, but with like no visual like language and stuff. Sometimes I was spent just ages like getting lost, and I was interacting with the right thing, but I was doing it the wrong way, or like something where it just wasn't clear enough. So I think you're right in terms of like it's a tough, like it is a tough line to do.
I think as well, like you kind of brought it up at the beginning of the show, right? It's so level design, as with most game design, like there are things that you kind of should do and shouldn't do, but it also massive depends on the type of game you're making, right? It's there's not just like, I mean, there's maybe some basic concepts that you take from like an isometric game and then stick them into a big 3D kind of third-person open action adventure, right? There are certain key things you take there, but like you were saying about Ico, like that and The Last Guardian, that game, people kind of expect a certain thing when they play that. Yeah. So to kind of maybe direct the player in such a way might not work for that game, right? I
mean, agree and disagree. I understand what you're saying, like in terms of context, like you're saying, like people are expecting a certain thing, but when you look at, I mean, like I'm talking about my personal thing, because I had a real love-hate relationship with that game where there's moments I was just like, I was screaming at my controller. Don't know why the controller, but it messed up. And then there was like the ending is one of the best endings in video games. I'm not going to give away spoilers, but in terms of emotional design, it's bang on. But for that game, the whole, one of the key pillars of that game is your interaction with the Big Bird AI partner. Yeah. And when you're getting frustrated because of you don't know what to do because of the guidelines, and like I'm saying, like sometimes you might be doing the right thing, but just something else is going on, or you can't find the right way, and your partner isn't helping you with that, then again it kind of breaks that connection that you're looking for. And maybe they did try and experiment, and like you said, it just didn't fit in with the overall feel. But like to me, visual language, just as we were saying at the beginning of this episode, these are things that are important to us as LDs. And like you said, with level design, it's principles, it's not rules.
Sure.
These principles are things we can suggest and we can talk about, and it's not going to work for every game.
I think more it was akin. What my point was that like the yellow paint on a ledge, like would that look out of place? Could you like the principle itself of using a visual identification marker to say this is maybe how you navigate, or this is good, you're going the correct way, like that those principles still stand, right? That is definitely part of it, but so much like the aesthetic choice, should I say, I think is the big number.
I think you're right, man. Like you're saying, like it's like you say, it's a like some things will look out of place and other things will look right there.
I think that as well, that kind of ties into like when you're making your levels. I mean, this is kind of it seems like a really obvious thing, but it has to fit within the level you're making, right? It can't, if it doesn't fit and it doesn't make sense to some degree, it's then it's going to be immersion breaking. I think it's going to pull the player out of the moment, which is definitely something you don't want.
Oh, definitely, yeah. And I think that's right. It's like it's understanding your game, and I think that goes back to when I was saying like one of the key pillars is like to understand your level, you have to understand your game, etc. So just that goes on to like research and pre-production. They're like a thing that I see, especially with like young level designers. I say that like we're in our rocking chairs, but we're on death's door. But what I mean is that there's a lot of like anything, the fun part normally of the game is jumping on and making it. Yeah. But it's okay to take your time and research. Research the area that you're going to make. If it's an industrial thing, research industrial sort of architecture, Victorian, and what props you'd find inside that. Take your time and study that, and also question what you're trying to do. Like I had a good example. I was making a personal game. I can't remember exactly what I was doing, but I created this like mechanic. I wish I could remember exactly what it was, but I created this mechanic and I gave it to someone to test. Yeah. And they said, "Look, it's fine as a mechanic, but it doesn't work in the theme of your game. It just didn't work because it didn't work in the setting, and it didn't work with the overall design idea." And like I said, sorry, it's very vague, guys. I can't remember what it is, and it just it goes back to do your research, and does this fit in? Take your time and look into that. I think that's important.
I mean, yeah, it's definitely kind of being aware of, say, if you were working on a project that has already groundings in other places. You definitely have to be aware of that. And I mean, this kind of. As a level designer and just someone who works within a big team, communication between all the disciplines is very much kind of a key thing. It's never. Obviously this is a level design show, but like that can't be understated. Is you aren't just this kind of one man. I'm going to do everything, and this is all my work. And like, I think one of the biggest pieces of advice I ever got given was, like, don't be precious about your work ever. Like, you can fight your corner in regards to what you feel is the correct way, but like, and you can definitely take ownership over things. But this isn't just. You could have the best level in the world, but if it doesn't work with everything else, then no one's ever going to remember that. People don't remember great levels in bad games.
That's a really good quote there, mate. That's a good one. And I think that goes, like, I was told a similar thing, and someone just said to me, remember, like, the game is king. Yeah. So whatever you're, that argument you're fighting for, that whatever you're having with I say fighting very loosely, it never comes down to punching. But that corner you're representing, just take a step back and breathe and think, does this benefit the game, or like you're saying, is this just for my own level?
Sure. I mean, I'm not going to obviously say what game I'm currently working on.
Top secret.
Totally top secret. But it's interesting because of the way the project has been going. I've given more freedom to the level artists themselves in regards to creating, say, points of interest. Now, it obviously has to follow certain design goals that I want to accomplish, and certain pathing. And
so, do you set those rules then in terms of for them? Is that something you do?
Sure, yeah. So this is like kind of going back to the communication thing. So I've done like the blockouts for all the stuff, and I kind of have a good idea of how the level beats are going to go, and from the narration standpoint, and kind of maybe the level design. Yeah. And then what I do is I go to, all right, we've got these points of interest here. These are really cool. I have the brief on kind of from what's happening with the story at these locations, and then I kind of do a quick sketch. And then I'll go over and I'll sit down with the level artists and we'll kind of hash it out. But it's very much not a hands-off approach, but those guys are really, really good at what they do.
Yeah.
You know, so, I mean, I could totally be the bull in a china shop and go, no, we're going to do it my way, and only my way.
The Seb way.
Yeah, but that would just boost my ego, and then it would hurt even more if then the game's in review and it's like, oh yeah, all these locations are terrible. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like, not that they are going to be, but it's, you know, I think what I'm trying to say is use the people around you to create the best thing possible, even if that does sometimes kind of, you almost give away a bit of control.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean?
No, I get that. I think that's a smart one, man.
But then again, like we were saying before, this doesn't work for everyone or every game. There's some games which, I don't know, off the top of my head, something like Super Meat Boy. You know, that's very much kind of level design. Like the art is very much there as an aesthetics thing.
Yeah.
But like the level design is king there.
Yeah.
You know, you wouldn't want, say, a level artist breaking or doing stuff that would then break that level. You know, that doesn't work.
I think that's right. I think even thinking about like Mario. If you look at Mario, man, it's like they have a level art team, and I might say I don't mean in a disrespectful way. It's like, as you're saying, like the art is there to complement. It's not to be the main feature of the game. Like, you know, look at their world. It doesn't logistically make sense at all. You know, but
it doesn't. It doesn't have to, right?
But that's the thing, like, exactly, because it's fun. You know. And
I think it's a fine line that between kind of almost. I know you guys in the last podcast were talking very much about scale, and I think scale is a really, really important thing to have, because as soon as you break that scale, then I think it's very much immersion breaking.
Oh, for sure.
It pulls the player out of the moment.
I thought you were talking about my weight. Then I was like, Seb, we don't need to bring that up on the podcast.
Oh man, I think my belt size is bigger than yours, so nothing to worry about. What was I talking about?
It's the scale, mate.
Oh yeah, the scale. So yeah, I think like Mario kind of gets away with it simply because it is very bespoke, right?
Yeah.
You have this small little avatar running around, so they can kind of the world itself lends credence to kind of that we can go a bit wacky with this. It very much fits with that game. Whereas something like, I don't know, Left 4 Dead, you know, I'm looking at my Steam library. But Left 4 Dead's really good. But that is it's an unbelievable setting in a believable world.
Yeah. I think that comes down to like a couple of things. Like, I think the reason also Mario gets away with it was because it's a product of its time. Like, when it first was created, there was, you know, like what we're saying now with the level design principles, they didn't exist. Like, Mario was one of the first games to ever really come up with rules. Like, if you look at the character on what is for a 2D side scroll, and I still see this mistake made to this day on other games, is because they want you to move right, they put you the furthest point on the left hand side of the screen.
Yep.
But, you know, there's still games where they want you to go a certain direction, but they put you in the middle. And it just doesn't, you know, it doesn't make the player want to go. Well, it confuses them on where to go.
Yeah.
So, like Mario, because, you know, it's restricted due to technical reasons, And also, like saying there weren't any rules or principles really. It was at a time where it was the Wild West. It created that stuff. And so it's like it's carried on part of that through its legacy because it's still going, was it 30 years now or something? Something crazy, if not longer.
Yeah, probably longer, I think.
And I think also another thing which you said with the Left 4 Dead, which I want to touch on as well, is you're saying like an unrealistic situation in a realistic place. Is a lot of games need to remember when, for all games when you're sitting down as a team, is a game doesn't need to be realistic, it needs to be believable. And that they're two very different things, because a game is a form of escapism, so it's okay to push things crazy as long as it's still believable.
Absolutely. I mean, if we'll take Left 4 Dead for example, right? So I mean that has that Mario principle of the first level of that game is you're on a rooftop. Now, your really only way to progress is down a staircase, which is very narrow. It introduces you to kind of some of the enemies, but it's safe enough where the player in that building only really has to focus on everything forward, right? They want the player to feel like, in order to progress, I need to move forward, and I'm not going to get jumped on from behind, right? And that's really good because they emphasize that throughout that entire first level. When you think about it, it teaches you about verticality in the game, and it also teaches you that it sets certain rules in regards to kind of not even rules really. They're more kind of no, there would be rules about like moving forward, about verticality, about kind of. I mean, you take the example of one of the things you said before about having like a big thing you need to focus on, and this is actually a really interesting one because I use this in my I use actually two things I took for my university thesis. I took a lot from Valve. Any level designers who want to be level designers who are just getting into it, like go and study Valve's games, man. Like Valve are masters. I mean, they don't necessarily make games anymore, but
with all that money,
they made some really good ones in the past.
For sure, man, for sure.
But like one of the big ones is the goal, right? So the goal of the first level of Left 4 Dead is get to Mercy Hospital. Like the name of name of that level is No Mercy, right? So that instantly kind of ties in with the theme of the level. And when you start, I think you see it in the cutscene, but you actually see Mercy Hospital is the tallest building around, and it is lit up. Right, so that instantly draws your attention there. There's lights there. There's power. There's also a helipad on top. So that was kind of one key thing that I took from that. Another one was the way they use lighting and certain props within that level. So as you come out that first kind of building, you head down an alleyway. Now there's a police car at the end, and this is really interesting for a couple of different reasons. So, one, the police car's lights are flashing, so they have lights, draw the player's attention straight there. Okay, this is where I need to go. Kind of time back into that. We're in an alleyway, so it's technically a corridor. I can only push forward. And secondly, the police car's lights are on, the flashing red and blues, and the police car's empty. Now, a really kind of interesting point on that when I was researching a lot of this stuff was police cars should never be empty, ever, especially with the red and blue lights flashing, because that instinctively you see police cars, you think safe, right? They're there to help people. So you take the police out of that, you have just a car empty with the doors open, that instantly feel, okay, something's wrong there, because that is a normal thing that you're used to seeing, but in an unnormal situation, right? So I kind of used this in my thesis at university, and me and a team basically created a level where we had to create paranoia within a player. So it's like, how do you do that from a level design perspective? And one of the key kind of things that I really wanted to push was, all right, well, our location should be a hospital, but an empty hospital, because hospitals are always busy. They're open. They're one of the very few buildings which are always open 24/7. So I mean that kind of, I don't know what you could take away from that, but like maybe do a bit of research into the level and kind of how it fits within what you want to accomplish from a design perspective. But yeah, I mean that was just an interesting point I thought I'd bring up about, yeah, hospitals are always meant to be busy, so you stick someone in an empty hospital, as cliche as it is, it still kind of almost sets the player on being uneasy straight away.
Yeah. Well, no, I think that comes to a point of when it comes to like level design, that ties in with like do your research. But another thing is like that emotion that you're chasing, because at the end of the day, like the level is supposed to create an emotion in the player, whether it be being paranoid, uneasy, powerful, sad, and it's that sort of thing. Like a sense of unease is a corridor that gets tighter and narrower as you get through. That's another one. And there's a great thing on shape theory. As the same with the narrow corridors. And one thing you want to think about is a lot of this stuff is subconscious. And there's a great thing with shape theory where people were shown these two shapes. One's a very jagged, sharp, kind of deformed star shape, and another is like a kind of like a soft splat with round, soft edges. And there were just two words. One was Kiki, and the other one was Boba. And I think it was like the majority of the people associated Kiki with the sharp shape, while Boba was associated with the softer shape. And just think about how these sort of shapes in your layouts can affect things. And then, for example, another one is when you think about corridors, they're rectangular. Yeah, they're tubes to show you in a shape. That's to lead you somewhere. Yep. That's to make you move. If it was in a square, you wouldn't know where to go because there's nothing pulling you. With the fact that it's in a elongated, is that the correct word?
Yeah, no, it is right.
I mean, I'm just a genius. I'm a wordsmith. But thank you, mate. But with the fact that it's elongated, it drags the player across there. So, like you're saying, do your research into when it comes to a level. One of the big things is set out your emotions and, like you said, the beats as well. I'm going to ask you about beats in 2 seconds, and then start to think about the setting, the environment, and also your geometry. How can that help to create that emotion you're looking for? And now, earlier in the show, you said about getting your level beats right. And I know when I was in university, we didn't know much about level beats. I'm wondering if you could explain to our listeners what level beat is. Sorry, this is a really long way around to get to this question, guys. I was saving that in the pocket for a while, but, we've... just a question for you. Like, could you describe what it is to our listeners, mate?
Sure, I mean, I can give you what I consider to be a level beat. I don't know whether
Seb's guide to level beats.
No, I mean, it's... So, imagine a section of time, right? And you've got a graph, and it's like a cardiograph, where you've got these spikes and troughs, right? Now, the spike for a level beat for me would be the spikes. It would be the constant heartbeat that pulses kind of through the level. And at certain points, you want something key to happen. Whether that could be anything, right? Depending on the game. Now, a level beat for me would be that, right? It would be that kind of interest spike, should we say? Yeah. Either from like a story perspective or like even just like a basic level design perspective. And the way I kind of look at them is, all right, well, I've got these spikes. Now, how do I want the pacing to work within those level beats, right?
Right. Okay.
And so, like, if the pacing of the level is quickening, then you want maybe more level beats, more interesting level beats. Would you agree with that, or would you consider that to be foolish, Max, and properly school me on exactly what a level beat is from your perspective?
I mean, I was about to shout down the mic at you. No, like that to me is what a level beat is. It's the key points in your level, where, just to give an example, let's say you're robbing a bank. So the key level beats is the player entering the bank, the player starting the heist, picking up the money, and then escaping the bank. They would be say for example, the key level beats. Yeah. And as you're saying, right, so now we plot that on a graph, and now it's up to you on how do you get there. And I agree. That to me is a level beat.
I mean, it's very kind of. I've taken it almost literally, right? You have the beat, and it's the beating heart of the level.
Oh yeah.
and I mean, I guess it works. But you can tie. I don't think it's as kind of basic as that. You can tie things in around that. So say you've got, like you say, you're robbing a bank. You turn up, and then the next level beat is you breaking into the safe, right? So what happens in between that? You know, do you have like these smaller beats perhaps, or do you just go straight into it? You know what I mean? It depends how you want to kind of structure the level. But I mean, as a bank robbery situation, for me, like that'd be looking more towards kind of how maybe the classic bank robbery in like cinema is. It starts slowly, and then it builds and builds and builds and builds and builds until you get your payoff, right? So thinking about it in a cardiograph machine is you've got like a beep, 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 you know, it almost kind of thing. So you want to hit more level beats on the latter end of the level. And that's kind of how I look at controlling pacing for levels.
Yeah, well, I think that's it. Like the level beats is a guideline for you as a designer, for you to remember what is it you're actually doing. You know, like what are the key moments you need, and what is this level trying to facilitate? Because again, that ties in with the emotion that you've already done, like planned with your level. You know, like if it's about being a somber level and you're trying to rob a bank, it's probably not going to work, you know. But that's it, man. I think that's what it ties in, and this should be done through the early stages of planning for your level.
I mean, again though, this kind of, I mean, we use the bank job as an example, but this doesn't have to be something as exciting as robbing a bank. You know what I mean, a level beat could be, I don't know, this is Breath of the Wild, for example. I mean, are there any big kind of vista / lakes, right?
Oh yes,
that's a very serene kind of moment. Maybe you climb, and then you get this payoff. It was like, oh my god, this vista is amazing. That in itself, for me, would be a level beat, right? It would be you'd tie off the mechanics and teaching player mechanics to the kind of level, but that would be a payoff. That for me would be a level beat.
It's the same with, like, for example, in Final Fantasy VII, where you encounter your first like proper meeting with Aerith. Like, and once you've had the cutscene, it's about like you following her for a little bit, and that's a level beat. It's the conversation with Aerith, and like that's it. And as you said, the graph is going to be peaks and troughs. You know, like a big mistake a lot of times is people think the graph has to like constantly be moving up and up and up, when it doesn't. You know, like it's okay to take a dip, to take a breather.
Absolutely. I mean, kind of going back to your point about contrast, right? With the yellow kind of on Naughty Dog conditioning the player about everything you can climb on is yellow, right? How do you draw that player's, or even back to the Division you were saying about, like, how do you draw a player's attention to that? You know.
Exactly, man. No, that's it. It's about the contrast, and Naughty Dog get pacing completely right. They're one of the best at it, in my opinion. So
I mean, here's a question for you, Max. So from a level design perspective, obviously the level beats are important. They tie into other things and other people you work with. How do you feel that Naughty Dog get that pacing down so well? Is this all kind of, do you think it's all figured out in the block out stage, or do you think that it's kind of, we've got a good idea what's going to work, but until we kind of get these big set pieces, these cinematics in almost, I mean, they can do basic cinematics, you know, as in the block out, but it's kind of, is it an exact science, shall we say?
I mean, for them, to me, they've got it right, because for them it is a science. Like, it's not, you've only seen Naughty Dog start to go a bit different from what they've done now recently with Lost Legacy, and a little bit in Uncharted 4, where they have a bit more open areas. Yeah, because, you know, they're masters of linear games, and I think that's part of the reason why they've got it right. Like, the pacing in Uncharted 1 is nowhere near as good as it is in Uncharted 4. And that comes down to it. And I think to me it comes down to one. I think they spend a lot of time in pre-production. I could be wrong. I've never worked there, and I know a couple of people who do work there, but, you know, we've never discussed it. But to me, I think part of it is down to pre-production, and with that, they know in the story. So, you know, we're talking about level beats as just per level. I think at the top they have a whole pacing graph on, this is that, this is this other one. Like if you look at
absolutely. I mean, this doesn't just apply
exactly.
This thing doesn't just apply to level design. This is a narrative thing. It's it's an overall
exactly
overall design thing.
And I think one of the ways that they do it so well is they're not afraid to have small moments, and part of that comes through their traversal. Like in Uncharted 4, they have the bit where you are just driving in Madagascar and it's just about the conversation.
Yeah.
And that's a real downbeat mission compared to the latter half of the mission where you're climbing up a bell tower, it's crumbling around you, and people are shooting at them.
So this kind of ties back into what you're saying about the that you don't want constant things happening, right? You have to think about this pacing when you're making levels. You have to think, all right, so say we've got a game with 20 levels, right? What happens in every kind of level, what is before and what is after. I mean, I worked on a game that was actually never released. It was like a third-person mech game. It was like a cross between Gears of War and Vanquish, should we say?
All right.
And that was actually really interesting, kind of how we set that game up, because it was just like you could constantly play it through. The entire game didn't have any loading screens. So it was just this constant travelling through. It was actually through like a ruined version of Manchester. It was a post-apocalyptic mech game in post-apocalyptic Manchester. It was great. It was cool.
Oh, cool.
I mean, unfortunately, it never got released. But so like with that one, it was like we had the levels and they kind of tied into each other, like literally, because like you were going from one kind of street junction to the next, and it was interesting kind of to work on the pacing of that and go, all right, well, we've got this big combat encounter in I don't know, on Deansgate, right? Which is a big street in Manchester, for those that don't know.
Everyone's heard of Manchester.
Yeah, right. Also, technically, there's only one football club in Manchester, just to point that out.
I mean, I don't need this coming on the podcast, this heat, mate.
No, that is legitimate. There's only one football club in Manchester, because Manchester United's in Salford.
You did it anyway, didn't you? You just did it anyway.
Totally did. But from a design perspective, it was kind of looking and working with the other level designers on the team and go, all right, well, we've got this big combat encounter. That's really cool. Okay, so my levels are after that, so how much kind of space and downtime do we want to give the player? How much like kind of narration or telling a bit of story? Maybe an odd little puzzle in there. We had some mechanics, and this kind of where you look at. For me personally, I'm very much a mechanics driven kind of level designer. I mean, I worked on the Lego games as well, so that's kind of maybe just kind of how I think of it.
Man.
I don't know about others, but like I take mechanics that I have and then I work levels around them, rather than kind of making a level and then going, how do I fit these mechanics? And that's daft, and this doesn't work. I'm very much aware. I think what I'm trying to say, I'm very much aware of the mechanics I'm using, right? And kind of how to build a level around them. And so much like in a theme, really. So one of the levels I did work on was after a big combat encounter. But it was like maybe a third of the way through the game, so the player had got used to the controls and the combat, and my job was then to have a bit of downtime, and then it was almost like calling the player's bluff as, oh, you thought that was the big fight? No, here's the big fight, because a mech twice as big as you turns up, right? So it kind of almost throws a wrench in the kind of the, like, oh, you've really had this kind of really high intense moment, and then it drops back down. Here's some dialogue, here's a little puzzle, like a welding puzzle, and then like you walk down this street and it was like, oh, this is really cool, nothing's really happening, this feels odd, and then we obviously brought the mood down, and the ambience, sound ambience of the level kind of brought that down. But that again was me working with other disciplines and kind of figuring that out, and then it was like you got to the end of the road and it was like, oh, here's the boss. But like before that, I always remember blocking this level out, because it's like a designer had done it for a previous brief and it didn't work with the brief, right? So we basically had to gut the entire thing, this section of the game, and then start again. And I'm a big fan of blocking out. Right? I love blocking out. It's kind of that exploring just basic shapes and how they kind of function together. It's like the character you play as had jump jets, right? So we got to account for double jumping and dashing mid-air, right? But how do you kind of work that into a really kind of linear street? It's tricky, right? So we blew out the buildings and we put like little things in there, like little tokens that the player could go and interact with, but we had some kind of verticality, so you're climbing on things. So just kind of, it sounds really simple to have just like a street with a couple of blown out buildings and a couple of platforms, but it's just that downtime is just enough downtime to make the other feeling, or the payoff of when the mech arrives, or the larger mech, it gives it more of more impact, right?
Yeah. No, I agree, and I think that's a smart way. Like another example for me that does this well is in the latest Tomb Raider, Rise of the Tomb Raider. Mm-hmm. Like their main like missions are super linear.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that in a bad way. That's just how they're laid out. And yet, after you finish them, the player always goes back to this hub space.
Yeah.
And it's just completely up to them. Do they want to do side missions, hunt, scavenge, all these things? But that's a downbeat because you have to make your way across that hub area to get to the next mission. Yeah. So again, they have those downbeats by letting go of the player's hand and allow them. So again, it just provides that contrast. And I have like a story from when I was at uni where I was doing a similar thing. We were doing this mission, and I was kind of in the midsection of a game before you went off and fought this boss. And like there was only like one bit of combat. The rest were all puzzles. And I remember like a friend looking at my layout, and I just blocked it out, but it was like puzzle after puzzle after puzzle after puzzle after puzzle, and this went on like eight rooms in a row as a different puzzle. Yeah. And like I didn't see the problem at the time, and my friend's like, you need to pick 3 of them and just cut them.
Yeah.
And I was like, but why? They're amazing. And he's just like, I'm not disagreeing, but my point is when you've got that many, the player's just going to be so mentally drained, and then has to go fight a boss after this.
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting because you brought up like kind of the Tomb Raider reference and how you come back to a hub world, and I recently, a few months ago, I replayed Darksiders.
That's the
it's the post-apocalyptic one where you play as War, right? You play one of the 4 Horsemen of Apocalypse. Yeah. I mean, it's literally Zelda, but in a post-apocalyptic world, and I mean that in the utmost kind of sincere way. It's a great game. If anyone's not played it, go and check it out. It's actually really cheap on Steam. So, but that had very much a kind of hub world. So you kind of venture off and you go and get introduced to new mechanics, and you'd always be like the progression system was really cool in that game. Mm-hmm. You'd always kind of learn. You get something at the end. It's like in a chest or whatever. And then you come back to the hub world, and then kind of the pacing would work its way out, and you had this downtime, and then you go off and the pacing would ramp back up because you'd always kind of be filtering off onto a new section. But to kind of the point you were making about the puzzles is Darkstalkers at the end of the first one. There's a section with like it's a dungeon, right? But it's a really kind of over the top puzzle sequence. But like one of them's fine, but it's the rule of 3. You have to do this 3 times.
Yeah.
And it just killed all the anticipation. I don't know what. Like I played it back again like recently, and I just kind of sat there going, God, this. I don't know what they were going for here. Do you know what I mean? I'm struggling to kind of put in what, like, was this just filler? Was this a really cool concept that they had that just kind of maybe was executed slightly poorly, or maybe that was what they intended? Maybe it was kind of this overly long thing to then make the boss fight at the end even more kind of a relief. I don't know. It's really interesting. It got me thinking. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, I mean, for all we know, they could have run out of time and not had it play tested.
Sure, you know. I mean, that's definitely. I mean, in all fairness, kind of going on a side tangent is again like a side tangent of a side tangent.
Seb stories.
Yeah, right. But like, I think a lot of people, especially, I was talking to a friend of mine, right? And we, in this day and age, with kind of how social media works and how kind of players want to be engaged with developers, right? The they want information. They want to know how games are made, right? More so than ever before, I think. Maybe it's just more kind of because
it's more doable now.
Yeah, sure. I mean, you got Twitter, right? So people can just ask questions and stuff. But what this has kind of led to, a lot of people kind of wanting to know more, is developers start putting out kind of PR things, right? So like videos and stuff, kind of showing you little bits and pieces behind the scenes. And
Hellblade's just done it. They did a dev diary all the way through to release. Yeah,
and most of these are really cool. Like, I remember watching. I think it was one of the Assassin's Creed ones, right? Many years ago, and I think it was for Unity. And I was really interested kind of how that Ubisoft built the cities. And there was like a little bit of a segment in there and kind of showing off some of the tools. And that's all I was interested in, right? That's all I was interested in.
I know which video you're on about, I remember that one.
And that was really cool just to kind of... I work in the industry and I found that interesting, right? Just that little bit of information. Anyway, point being is that I think a lot of people, they play games and they're really interested in kind of how developers do it, but they get... I think I said this on Twitter. People, like a lot of players, because they don't educate themselves, and it's not a big kind of thing they learn over time. They just feel that they know these bits of information, so they put 2 and 2 together and get 5. Do you know what I mean? And they have kind of. I think this ties into maybe real expectations of what developers do, right? And kind of what they expect from developers. It was just it's just an interesting kind of thought process I had from kind of when I look at a level compared to, say, I don't know, when one of my friends who doesn't work in games kind of looks at a level, maybe he picks up on certain things but doesn't necessarily understand them, but kind of forms his own conclusions on that.
Yeah, man, I think that's also something to always remember when we are making games, is how how we see it, because obviously we work very closely with the product. And then how someone can take it, it's the first time they see it, and they see it and play it so differently. Yeah, and that's
not necessarily a bad thing, right? It's up to you as a designer, as a level designer, to kind of. I was actually listening to your podcast and before the previous one, and it was like one of your friends says, always show, don't tell, and if someone takes something away from the level you've made, then. And that wasn't necessarily what you intended, is that their fault, or is that your fault? You know what I mean? Or is it anybody's fault?
That's a good one. I think what I like, it comes down to what you're trying to say with the story. Like, if you're trying to really dig home a certain story and they interpret it wrong, then it's on you. But the great thing with environmental storytelling and that rule of show, don't tell, is the fact that we get a chance to keep things open to interpretation.
Yeah.
And like I said, it depends on the context of what you're trying to do. But Last of Us does a really good job with their environmental storytelling. When you're just going through people's houses, for example, we'll see blood on the floor, some bullets, and then a door bust open.
Yeah.
And someone can interpret it as like someone killed someone and ran off, or you can interpret it as someone got shot and escaped through the back door. Neither's wrong, neither's right. But it's that story, and it sticks with you, because as humans we're always constantly looking for that, because it's ingrained in us as children, being read stories, seeing films, that 3-arc sort of story with beginning, middle, end, and often we show a bit at the middle or a bit at the beginning, and then the player will fill in that missing chapter.
Yeah, it's as I've got older, kind of a lot of that environmental storytelling from when I play games, right? Not so much when I'm analysing them from a level design perspective, just when I play them. I kind of have to switch my brain off when I play certain games. I want to enjoy this as a player, right? Which is actually really hard to do. But, there's kind of a lot of that, like environmental storytelling, where like maybe 10, 15 years ago, my imagination would have gone wild, and I think that's possibly why I enjoyed Resident Evil 2 so much. Like, that is one of my all-time favourite games.
Such a good game.
It's a fantastic game.
It's my favourite of the series.
But I loved Raccoon City. I loved the lore. I kind of loved the environments that they made. And my imagination went wild at the time. like we've got buildings, or who lived there, right? It's the car crash, and then like there's a body slumped over. Who was that person, right? And you kind of form all these things in your head. As I got older, I don't know, man. I just maybe I'm a bit more. I'm getting grumpy in my old age, but kinda, I don't buy in necessarily to that anymore, as much, should I say? But like, is that just me? Is that just the way kind of the games I play? Maybe I don't know. I think there's a lot of factors involved, right?
That's what I was going to say. I think there's a lot of factors. I think part of it, sadly, is age in
just
terms
becoming
of
jaded and old.
You're as young as you feel, so. But I think part of it also is these rules that we now have for environmental storytelling. Like Raccoon City, again, the PlayStation 1 days, there still wasn't as key rules. And now, like, we kind of know, like not everything follows those rules, etc. But they're definitely a lot more structured than there was before. And then also, I think a lot of games now are playing a lot more into realism. Like, again, what's happening in Raccoon City is a realistic city in an unrealistic situation, but everything feels a lot more grounded in realism these days.
I think as well, I mean, it's because you saying about these rules, like, I mean, people have been making games for over 30 years, right? So we're hitting now a point where, like, I wouldn't say the best has passed, but like there are certain things which people just the expectations have been met, right? In a lot of cases for a lot of genres. So like, I don't know, third-person action games. Like, if people aren't surprised by things and they're just kind of used to it, like, how do we as level designers keep that interesting? To keep the player engaged. Do you know what I mean?
For me, man, like when I think about that, it's about us having a renaissance in terms of, dropping other big words, being pressed. You know what I mean? It's like we've now got these rules, and it's now up to people to break them rules, which is why some indie games are doing so well, because they're doing that. And like I think you're right. It's easy for us to hit a slump with constant sequels and what have you. Like, and that's not to say they're a bad thing, but I can see how this has ramifications down the line.
I mean, it's interesting because a lot of people kind of are really not upset, but kind of get a bit turned off at the fact that there are so many games out there, right? Just everybody can make a game now.
I'm definitely lost. Like, I just definitely find it like crazy. Back when I was a teen, when I was buying my game magazines, I could roughly keep up with most releases in a year.
Yeah,
I can't keep up with that many releases in a month now.
No, I mean, as we've very much found out, is like as soon as you start working on games, like the time you actually have to play them like properly, when it gets really busy, is just that nosedives. So you kind of have to pick. You have to narrow your selection, should we say?
Yeah.
Which is trickier because as creative people, we want to be sponges, right? We want to absorb as much information as possible. But kind of going back to what I was saying about just the amount of games out there, is it's a melting pot with that much competition. Competition breeds excellence, right? So therefore, with more games, there should be more great games. Do you feel that that's the case?
No, I don't think that is. Like,
you don't think so?
I don't feel there's like more excellent games than there was 10 years ago. Like, if you were to do it in terms of relative numbers, like, like if you actually do maths behind it, just because there's more of it doesn't mean there's more great games. Like, I don't know, if we compared it year by year, I think the number would still roughly be the same.
I mean, it's all relative, right? I mean, it's all personal.
But that's another thing, personal preference.
Yeah,
I mean, look, but like also the competition. Like, if you looked because the green light thing was cut last year, and now 80% of Steam's library was released in 2016 alone.
Yeah, I saw them numbers.
And again, a majority of that, was people's first games. People trying it out and etc. But it's a tough one, man. Like, it's a weird one to think about. But like, I definitely think there's stuff that we're all learning from one another, and that to me is the most important. Like, say for example, these next 2 years are, we still have some fantastic games in there, but it's not the pinnacle of games. I'm alright with that because the learning material we now have, like, look how many Facebook groups, me and you are on Twitter, how many amazing people that are doing stuff. Like, I saw a great save point the other day, which was just fantastic. it was simple, but it just worked in the theme. It was this: you play as a moth, and there's a little light bulb that's like just faintly dimming.
Oh, I think I remember you tweeting about it. GIF. Yeah, I saw that.
And then you hit the light switch and it turns on, and then moths fly away. But like, it was a super nice way to do a save point. And I'm not saying like other games haven't done similar things, but again, like that's another learning material for that. You know, and there's a great article on. And going back to what you said about teaching players through things, not making them read, like you were saying with the Uncharted, how they did it. There's a game of like, I've forgotten the name of it, but it's something Kingdom, and it's a strategy game. There's an article on Gamma Sutra on how they taught the players, and they did it by showing like the value of a building and what have you through like the levels, the number of floors, the type of roofing tile that was there, and then to show that because you were planning a city, it wasn't just here's a building. Each building came with like a path attached to it. So showing, instead of saying you need to make sure everything connects, because when the player saw that foreshadow of a path, they instantly started to think in a bigger way within a city. So again, just all that material can come to us, to all of us as devs, and then it pushed forward. Like I don't think what we in this year, we've had a handful of great. I mean, Zelda's been one of the best games of this year so far. Nier game, Automata was rated very highly. Persona 5 came out and that got very good reviews as well. Hellblade's got some great ones. So there's some good stuff, but I also think this year's been quite a quiet year.
For me personally, I've not played any of the games you've just mentioned. I've played a bit of Breath of the Wild, right? But the other ones I've not played. But
I haven't played some of them, but I'm just saying they reviewed so highly. Like they were a lot of in their Metacritics. A lot of them were in their 90s or back end of the 80s. You know, so
the Hellblade one. That's by Ninja Theory, right?
Yes, great company. I really, really like their work.
They're an interesting studio, right? Because I don't necessarily pay attention to them, but everything I've played by them, I've enjoyed.
I think they're very good. Good studio.
I'm kind of biased because one of the guys I used to work with actually is a producer.
Oh, really?
Producer on Hellblade, right? So I feel like I owe it to him to play the damn thing. But from everything I've heard, it's fantastic. I'd be curious to know, especially considering I think how many people were actually working on that game.
30, I believe.
I heard even less than that. Probably core team is maybe 20, maybe. To get something. I think we're going off on a bit of a tangent, but to kind of go back to the level design stuff is like, how many level designers did they have on that? You know, how much kind of did they balance between how much heavy lifting does the level designer do in regards to like the block out, obviously, but like the asset population. How much kit bashing is there actually going to be there? How much does the level designer do there?
Fun fact: I know the LD there used to work for me at Ubisoft. Wan is I don't know his involvement, but he, because I watched the video, I watched that thing all the way through development, and it's paid. It comes payday tomorrow, so I think I will be picking that up. But like from what I saw in the video, he was doing some of the levels as well as doing the combat design. Wow. So from what it seemed, and then one of the artists, because they were looking at doing procedural generated stuff, so the artist did a lot of base stuff that could then have X many variations to it. So for a game like that, I think you need a very multifaceted. Is that the right word?
Multifaceted solution.
Thank you very much, sir. It was, that to create that sort of game.
That was kind of what they were going for, right? It's this kind of double A game made on a budget, right? And you kind of have to be smart with that. This is again tying into level design. As level designers, anyone that's listening to this, you want to be smart with how you do things, right? But depending on where you work or what projects you work on, I've worked in multiple different studios now where my job description changes depending on the studio and my daily tasks, right? And it's I think you've got to be flexible. You can have obviously specialities, but as a level designer nowadays, I think you have to be flexible, to some degree. You know, one of the studios when I worked on the Lego games, right? I did no artwork for that. My population of art assets, because they were all made by the artists. I put requests in for stuff you interacted with, but the actual level art themselves, itself, I did nothing about that, and that was kind of more me just talking to the level artist, and they went off and were very, very good at that. And then the next studio I worked on with the mech game was I did the block art and a lot of asset population, but then there was the level artist that picked up and basically looked at all my stuff and went, "That's terrible. I'm going to make it look really good," and that was okay too. Yeah. And now the game I'm working on at the moment it's kind of, I think I've hit a sweet spot where I do get the level artists, kind of going back to what I was saying before, is I give the level artists creative freedom, but there are still a lot of the game where asset population is down to me, so I get to kind of do the block out and also
dress the level.
Yeah. And that's really cool, man. I think I got the best of both worlds in regards to that. But it depends on what you're into, right? Some people just might not like that.
Yeah, man. No, that's it. But I think we're going to wrap this episode up, because this has been a double trouble episode where it's over an hour. To say our normal one's 20 to 30 minutes. So just before we go, I just want to say a huge thank you, Seb, for joining me.
No problem, mate.
And I just want to say like a rundown again for you guys for things to think about, because these last, I'd say, 10 minutes of us chatting about the game industry is in the state of the game industry as general. But the first few things, like,
Max, just stick it all up. Just stick it up.
I'm sorry. Can I finish, Seb? Can I finish? Okay. Sorry, sir. I forgot this was your podcast. But I just what you do to me, Seb. No, man. Like, so the things to just think about with what we talked about earlier is, with exploration, think about hiding stuff from the player. Encourage exploration by teasing things and forcing them to move. Do your research. What is the emotions you're trying to create, and think about how you can tackle that with not only your environment but your geography as well, with your shapes and your layout. Then we had so much covered here. Visual language, we covered on that one. How you can show the player what is playable, and as Seb mentioned, like, does it fit the style of your game? Think about that when you're doing stuff. What was some of the other stuff we covered, mate? Because I know there's more than that.
Oh, mate, we did loads.
Okay, so just listen to it.
We put the word to right.
I think we did, mate. I think we did. So before we get going, Seb, how can people reach you, and how can they contact you?
I'm on Twitter, so twitter.com. So it's Darth Sebius, DarthSebious.
Cool. I'll put that up on in the description as well for the podcast, so you can just click and follow him. So thank you guys for listening. It's been an absolute pleasure to take an hour of your time for you guys to listen to us. So if you want to hit up me with any questions or any examples that you thought about, then follow me on Twitter @MaxPairs. And then the main call of action I'd like to say is, please subscribe to the podcast. It lets me know that this is something that you're enjoying, and it's something that we're doing right, so we can get more interesting people, not really like Seb, better than Seb,
Yay.
On. We can upgrade our budget and afford someone better.
You got to start somewhere, right?
Exactly, so you'll never be forgotten, mate. But again, thank you guys for joining us, and cheers, Seb, for joining me. Cheers, guys. Take it easy.
Bye-bye.
Hey, guys and girls. Just before we do the sign-off, a few things I want to address about this episode just before it ends. So I was listening to this while I was editing. I just want to firstly apologise for the echo. Cheers, Seb. It's all because Seb didn't have his headphones in while I was recording, so it's our mistake at the time. So again, I am sorry if you had to endure... Sorry that you had to endure that, but next time there won't be a mistake like that. Again, I wanted to give another thank you to Seb, because he's an amazing guy. I think he's got a great mind for level design, and one of my favourite people to chat to about level design, because we learn a lot. Just generally when we talk about games, one another, I think that's always the most important thing. And a couple of things I want to address in the podcast from what I said as well. While recording this podcast, 2017 hadn't finally finished, and when in the podcast earlier, you hear me mention that 2017 was a bit of a down year. I want to change my statement as you all know now that it's in 2018, 2017 was a phenomenal year for games. And there truly was amazing things. I just finished What Remains of Edith Finch. If you follow me on Twitter, at Max Pez, then you'll see a few tweets I mention it, because it was an amazing game. Nier is fantastic. Legend of Zelda is now one of my all-time favourites of games. I'm just starting through Persona 5. And yeah, I still stand by, I think the quality of games and the ones that stand out roughly remain the same, but in terms of percentage. But 2017 was a great year overall. Probably one of the best years in video games for a long time. So I just want to correct myself now that I've heard it from the back. And also, I just want to say as well, when I chatted about Hellblade, saying I knew Juan, who is the level designer there, everything I said comes from the dev diaries. It's not anything he told me or anything like that. I do say it in there, but I just want to make it clear that all the stuff I said about Hellblade was from the dev diaries. So, again, this isn't anything exclusive. It's just what I learned from watching the dev diaries. So, just wrapping it up again, I just wanted to correct myself because I think it's important to do that. So yeah, guys, thank you very much, and I hope you enjoyed this episode. Take care, guys. Bye.